Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you about Esther Part 3. Remember I told you Esther meant something hidden, right? Comes from the Hebrew word, and to hide or conceal. And we've already done all 10 chapters of Esther, so what more can we talk about in the book of Esther? Well, you'll be surprised. I got a whole list of stuff to cover today. All right. Well, as we told you, God is not mentioned in the book of Esther. And no form of God is mentioned there. Elohim, Yahweh, Adonai, which is Lord, Shaddai, his Ehyah, I am. None of these are mentioned in the book of Esther. And her name, Esther, comes from the Hebrew verb satar, which means to hide. And if you put an aleph in front of that, it becomes Esther, which is a wonderful conjugation of satar that we miss with our English eyes, right? And putting the aleph in front makes it I will hide, which God obviously definitely hides in the book of Esther. He's hiding in the background. I got a lot of people, a lot of research. Some people say that Esther shouldn't even be in the Bible because there's nothing biblical or godly in it. But as you will see, God is definitely there. Okay. And when you think of hiding is not always looked on as a positive trait. Remember in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 3:8, starting, it says, "Now they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord God called to the man and said to him, 'Where are you?' He said, 'I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself.'" So there, hiding is a negative trait. We see it again in Exodus 2, starting in verse 11. "It came about in those days when Moses had grown up that he went out to his fellow Hebrews and looked at their hard labors, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his fellow Hebrews. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw that there was no one around, he struck and killed the Egyptian and hid his body in the sand." So, again, hiding, negative. But is it always negative? And why did God hide in the scroll of Esther? You know, God is never shy about doing miracles, right? He had the burning bush, parting of the Red Sea, smoking mountains, and throughout the Tanakh you'll have the word of the Lord came to, or thus saith the Lord. But none of that is in the book of Esther. And there are no sacrifices in Esther, there's no prayers, there's no worshiping, there's nothing religious in the book. Okay? Well, there's a couple reasons, I think. One is Deuteronomy 31:16, starting there. It says, "And the Lord said to Moses, 'You will soon rest with your fathers, and these people will rise up and prostitute themselves with the foreign gods of the land they are entering. They will forsake me and break the covenant I have made with them. On that day my anger will burn against them, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them, so that they will be consumed, and many troubles and afflictions will befall them. On that day they will say, have not these disasters come upon us because our God is no longer with us? But I will surely hide my face in that day because of all the evil which they will do, for they will turn to other gods.'" So we know that the Jews, they weren't keeping Sabbath for 400 and some years, and God had them taken to Babylon, And then from Babylon they were taken to Persia. The Persians invaded Babylon. So, as Deuteronomy prophesied, that they will break the covenant that he had made with them, and he will hide his face from them. So, it's not surprising that God is not hidden here. This is an example of him fulfilling what he said. And in Deuteronomy 31:18, there it actually says, surely hide. We talked about this in the first Esther video. Whenever a word is repeated, it adds emphasis. Surely hide. But remember that hiding is not necessarily neglecting. Okay? He is in the background pulling the strings, this divine incognito. He is there making everything happen. Okay? And look at Job 13:24. It says, why do you hide your face and consider me as your enemy? Psalm 10:1. Why do you stand far away, Lord? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? Psalm 13:1. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Psalm 44:24. Why do you hide your face and forget our affliction and oppression? Psalm 88:14. Why, O Lord, do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me? So it's not uncommon in the rest of the Bible for God to appear to be hidden, at least in the eyes of man. But that doesn't mean that he's actually hidden. You know, first of all, they're praying to a God that they think is hidden. Just the act of praying to him, they have some thought in their brain that he must be there because they're talking to him, right? And they're assuming that he's hearing their pleas, okay? And most of the time, in these Old Testament pleas for God, why are you hiding? Why aren't you there? They end up finding that he's been there all along. Okay, they find the God that they're seeking. Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Psalm 46:11. The Lord of armies is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. So he is there. And we should remember that in the New Testament, it tells you that there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. Matthew 10:26. So do not fear them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Mark 4:22. For nothing is hidden except to be revealed. Luke 8:27. There is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be made known and brought to light. Luke 12:2. There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, and nothing hidden that will not be made known. So this concept of God being hidden, that must be a man-made concept, because God is not hidden. As we've shown in many videos, God is in every letter. The rabbis even believe that God is he's in the spaces between the letters, the white space between the letters. And it won't surprise me when we get to heaven and we have eternity, God will show us all these places where he is hidden. So I'm going to just talk about a few of the places in Esther that we do see God hidden. One of them we mentioned earlier was Esther 2:6. It says that these Jews who had been taken from Jerusalem with the exiles, who had been deported with Jeconiah, king of Judah. So Jeconiah has the word Yah in it. So that's Yah is short for Yahweh. And Jeconiah means Yah has established. Another place where we see God, look in Esther 1:4. It says, at that time he displayed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his great majesty for many days, 180 days. Okay, where's God in that verse? Well, you don't see it in the English, but look at it in the Hebrew. you have that little word, Aleph Tav. Aleph Tav appears a couple thousand times in the Old Testament. It's an untranslatable word. Aleph, remember, is God's letter. Tav is a covenant. It's the cross, right? Two crossed sticks. So Aleph Tav, which God on the cross. I think Aleph Tav, or Et as it's pronounced, appears at least 74 times in the book of Esther. I may have missed some. But it is all through the book of Esther. So we do have Aleph Tav there. Remember, Aleph Tav was in the first verse of the Bible. Bereshit bara Elohim et. Boom! Et. Et sits at the right hand of God. Its letters represent God on the cross. It's a picture of Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. Okay? Who the Messiah is also God. Another place where you'll see God hidden in the book of Esther. Remember, the letter Yod is the letter that God uses to begin all his names. It's his initial, okay? We see it in Yahweh, Yeshua, his city, Yerushalayim, his country, Israel. Yod represents God. All right, so how does that apply here? Well, look at Esther 8:1. It says, on that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came before the king because Esther had disclosed what he was to her. That word for Jews, if you'll notice here in the Hebrew, it's hayudiyom. Hayudium. There's a mouthful. But notice it's plural, so it's going to end in yud mem. But here it ends in yud mem. There's an extra yud in the plurality of the word Jews. And it's not just here, it happens 6 times in the book of Esther, where he puts double yuds to pluralize the Jews. Now, why would he do that? Nowhere else in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, does he pluralize Jews with double yods. But here he does. And I believe it's the Jews, Hayudium, and then there's an extra yud in there, that's God. He's in there with the Jews. Very clever. Very clever. Here's one that's a little bit out there, but it's there. In Esther 1:1. I'm not even going to put it in English, I'm just going to put it in the Hebrew. Notice it begins, the first 2 letters. Here, I'm going to just crunch them all together. That's Esther 1 and 2. If you put them all together, the first 2 letters are Vav Yod. Vav Yod, Vav is and Yod is the initial for God. So it starts out, and God. Then, or and Yah. Look at the next 9 letters. I have them colored here. Okay, we're going to take those and we're going to put in the gematria. The gematria of the next 9 letters adds up to 386. 386. Where have we seen that before? I remember. Yeshua's name. Yud 10, Shin 300, Vav 6, Ayin 70. Yeshua adds up to 386. So right off the get-go, boom, we see and God and Yah, and then we have Yeshua's value. If you continue on, the next group of letters in order, put in the gematria, they add up to 1,480. And, oh, that one rings a bell. 1,480 is the Greek isopsophy total of Christos, or Christ. So, right off the get-go, you have these values that add up to 386 and 1480, which points to Yeshua HaMashiach, because Christos, Christ, anointed one, Messiah, Mashiach, right? Right off the get-go, you have Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, and he references it in the Hebrew and in the Greek. Very nice. We showed you in the first video that there are 4 times where Yahweh's name is mentioned by using the first and last letters of 4 consecutive words. Here were the 4, Esther 1:20, Esther 5:4, Esther 5:13, and Esther 7:7. And here they are in the Hebrew, and those each are, I've just picked out 4 consecutive words from those 4 verses. And if you look at the first letters of those, the first 2, the first one, the first letter is a Hey, then the first is a Vav, then a Hey, and then a Yod. There's Yahweh's name there, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. And in Esther 5:4, you have it also, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. The 4 letters beginning 4 consecutive words. In the last 2, look at the last letters of these 4 consecutive words. And you get the first, 5:13 Esther is a Hey, Vav, Hey, Yod. And in 7:7 of Esther, it's Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, using last letters of 4 words. And there's an order to this. Notice 2 of them, God's name is written forwards. One using the first letters and one using the last letters. The other 2, God's name is written backwards, using first letters and last letters. The first one is written about a queen, and the second one is spoken by a queen. The first one was about Vashti, and the second one was spoken by Queen Esther. In the second 2, the third one there is spoken by Haman, and the last one is spoken about Haman. So there's an order there. The first and third are spoken by Gentiles, Memucan and Haman. And the second and fourth are spoken by Jews, Esther, and the last one by the writer of Esther, which many people believe was Ezra. We don't know for sure, but it's a good possibility. This story takes place in the time of Nehemiah, Ezra. You'll notice that all 4 of them include the word king. The first and third that are spoken by the Gentiles, they talk about something of the king, possessive kings. And the ones that are spoken by the Jews have the word king in them. The first one, the one that begins, the first 2 that have his name with the first letters, this is where God, behind the scenes, he's initiating something. So in the first one, the king initiates an edict, okay, that all women must, wives must pay respect to their husbands. And in the next one, Esther initiates a banquet, which is going to bring a solution to the problem. In the last 2, in Esther 5:13, we see that Haman's end, he was a happy man, and all of a sudden things got reversed when he found out that Mordecai is going to have to be praised and paraded through town, and things start to turn. Haman's end is set, and God's name appears in the last letters. And then in Esther 7:7, Haman's end is final, and God's name appears as the final letters of those 4 consecutive words. Very, very clever, and it's again showing that there's order involved. In Esther 7:5, we're going to see 2 instances of God's name. It says, "Then King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, where dwelleth the enemy that dareth presume in his heart to do this thing?" Esther told the king that all the Jews were going to have to be killed, and he wants to know who and where is this person who would presume to do such a thing. In this verse, if you count every 3rd letter, it spells Eya. It spells it backwards, but it's there. Aleph, Hey, Yod, Hey. Eya is I am. This is how God answered Moses when he said, when the Jews asked, they're going to ask me, what is your name? What do I tell them? Eya, Ashur Eya. I am that I am. So it's not beginning 4 consecutive words, but it is every third letter, okay? But don't worry, because in that same verse, Esther 7:5, there are 4 consecutive words that end. You can see on the second line, it ends in Aleph, then a Hey, then a Yod, then a Hey. There's a beginning or ending 4 consecutive words. So he's hidden there again. Very nice. You know, what are the chances, or how often is that? Is that a rare instance that 4 consecutive words spell out Yahweh's name? The first time we see it, this is a little side trail here, I know you like these, in Genesis 19:25, when God is destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, it says, thus he destroyed these cities and the entire plain, including all the inhabitants of the cities and everything that grew on the ground. In that verse, you can see in the Hebrew, here you have 4 words, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, that begin those 4 words. So that's the first time it happens, and it's Yahweh's name going forward. And there are 3 other instances in the Torah. There's only 4 instances total in the Torah. Exodus 4:14, Numbers 13:32, and Deuteronomy 11:2, and I have them here for you to see. In the rest of the Tanakh, there are 20 examples, and I have them listed here. We're not going to go through them all. You can look them up on your own, look at them in Hebrew. Notice 3 of them have green asterisks there, and I'll show you why in a moment. Yahweh's name backwards in 4 consecutive words. In the Torah, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 examples where God's name is written backwards in 4 consecutive words. And in the rest of the Tanakh, oh, by the way, in Numbers 151, notice I have that one highlighted with orange asterisks. What is special about that one? If you look at it, notice Yahweh's name is twice in there. In the first line, you have Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, and beginning 4 consecutive words. And on the second line, we have it again, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So Numbers 151 gets a double Yahweh. And the backwards acrostics in the Tanakh, there's what, I'm going to hear 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 24 examples where his name is backwards. And I have the green asterisks. You've seen those earlier, I just showed you. What is special about that one? Are those 3? Here they are. This one, look at Samuel 18:4. Notice you have 4 words on the second line. One of them begins Yud, then a Hey, then a Vav, then a Hey, then a Yod. So his name is actually written both ways. You can read it forwards and you can read it backwards. And the same in Psalm 96:11 and Ezekiel 46:1. And that's the total number of times that his name is either forwards or backwards using the first letters of 4 consecutive words. You've seen them all, my friends. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about now God being hidden, and we've shown you many examples of him really not being hidden. It's there in the Hebrew. You know, it's a shame that our churches are not teaching the Hebrew, because we should be able to see this. We should tell our congregations. I mean, we have so many sermons out there about, oh, God's not in Esther. He's everywhere in Esther. Okay, and not just behind the scenes pulling strings. His name is actually there. Okay. Okay, we mentioned some typology of Esther in a previous video, and I want to just go a little bit deeper. Let me just tell you, I'm not hanging my hat on this. This is just after lots of thought and prayer and thinking, and who is who in the Esther story. And again, this is not set in stone, but let's start with King Xerxes or Ahasuerus. Who would he represent? Well, I think he represents God. Okay, and why do I think that? Well, in Esther 1:7, it says, drinks were served in golden vessels of various kinds, and the royal wine was plentiful in proportion of the king's bounty. Okay, golden vessels, I can see God drinking out of golden vessels. Wine is definitely, bread and wine are those are two biggies with God. The king's bounty, I mean, God owns everything. Okay, so this is a rich king, so it points to God. Look at 1:8. But the drinking was done according to the royal law. There was no compulsion, for so the king had given orders to each official of his household that he was to do as each person pleased. So you could drink a little, you could drink a lot, you could not drink at all, you could drink it all. I don't care. It's up to you. You know what that tells me? There's no compulsion. That's free will. God gives us free will. We can believe, we cannot believe. Okay? King Ahasuerus, you can drink, you cannot drink. Up to you. So that's a picture of God. Another example that maybe that king represents God, besides him being all-powerful in this story, right? And God is all-powerful, omnipotent. Look at verse 1 of chapter 1. Now it took place in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Cush over 127 provinces. Why 127 provinces? Is there any kind of... That one bothered me for years. Why was that one? Why is that number so special? Well, 127... Let's look at 128. 128 is a godly number. It's 2 raised to the 7th power, right? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And 7 we know is God's perfection, God's completion. So 2 to the 7th is 128, 120, and that would be God. 127 is just a little bit short. So it's not quite, okay? And Ahasuerus is not God, but in typology he is, and he's kind of going to be the closest that there is. So that could be why it's 127, pointing out that it's 2 to the 7th minus 1. Okay? And it's interesting, I mean, Ahasuerus is the king. He's powerful over this huge empire, but Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he pleases. So God uses kings to fulfill his purpose. You know, when you put all these things together, you've just realized that 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for instruction, for conviction, for correction, and for training in righteousness, so that the man of God may be complete, fully equipped for every good work. Proverbs 16:34, it says, the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Well, you've seen in the Esther story, Haman's going to cast lots to find out what day to kill all the Jews. Okay, you can cast lots all you want. You can shoot dice all you want. But every decision is from the Lord. Remember, there's no coincidence. There's no biblical Hebrew word for coincidence. Okay? All right, Queen Vashti, who is she? I think that she might be the Jews who rejected their Messiah. You know, the Jews are waiting and waiting and waiting for the Messiah, and he comes and they reject him. And Queen Vashti, she is summoned by the king to show off her beauty. Look at Esther 1:10. On the 7th day, when when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served in his presence to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and the princes, for she was beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command delivered by the eunuchs. Then the king became very angry, and his wrath burned within him. You know, I've read commentaries where people say that when he invited her to come, he wanted her to come naked. There is nothing that points to such nonsense. So people who are interpreting it, that's why she didn't come, because he wanted her to come naked. Crazy, in my opinion. Okay. All right. Another reason why Vashti might be the Jews who rejected their Messiah is, look in chapter 2, verse 1. It says, after these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had subsided, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decided regarding her. Well, that kind of reminds me of the Jews also, because when the Jews rejected their Messiah, God scattered them all over the world. And then the Gentile period came, right? The good news, the gospel was given to the Gentiles where we could be saved. But there's coming a time when the time of the Gentiles is over. The rapture takes place and up go the believers, and then God turns his attention back to the Jews. Read the book of Revelation. It's also referred to as the time of Jacob's trouble. Who's Jacob? Jacob gets his name changed to Israel. So God is going to remember the Jews. God is going to remember Israel. And the Bible ends with a whole book dedicated to the Jews. Okay, so Queen Vashti could be the Jews who rejected their Messiah. We have the wise men who understood the times. Who are they? Well, we did talk extensively on that. They are the Magi who arrived whenever Yeshua Jesus was born. Esther 1:13 references it. First says, then the king said to the wise men who understood the times, for it was the custom of the king so to speak before all who knew law and justice. I think these guys, remember, the Jews were taken to Babylon, and in that group there was a couple guys who were like exceptional. Daniel was one of them, and his 3 buddies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they were given special food and special schooling with all the wise men of Babylon. And then when Persia invaded and took them to Persia, Daniel, he was in the group of wise men of Persia. And he came up with all kind of prophecies. One of the big ones was the day that the Messiah would come. This is Daniel 9:27, 9:25 through 27. And he predicted the day that Messiah would arrive. And those were in the records of Media and Persia. And when Daniel died and time moved on, the wise men remained there, and they had those records, and they were studying those records, and they were counting those days, and all of a sudden they realized, hey, we're getting close to that prophecy that our old friend from 400 and some years ago predicted. And that Messiah should be showing up. Let's go. And they followed the star in the east, right? And we see that fulfillment in Matthew 2, in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, Matthew 2, verses 1 and 2. Now after Yeshua Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. So these Magi, they've arrived, they came from the east. Well, Persia is east of Jerusalem. Okay? So I think Magi are the Magi. No problem there. It's the same word in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. We have Haggai. We covered him extensively also in the previous video. He is the Holy Spirit. And Esther 2:8. So it came about when the command and decree of the king was heard, many young ladies were gathered to the citadel in Susa, into the custody of Haggai, that Esther was taken to the king's palace into the custody of Haggai, who was in charge of the women. Remember the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel is Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Gimel represents Holy Spirit. So Haggai's name has a Gimel right in the middle of it. And what are the two letters on either side? It's a Yud and a Hey. That's Yah. That's short for Yahweh. So this Haggai is the Spirit of God. And remember, whenever it was Esther's turn to go in before the king, she took nothing with her, and she asked for nothing to be taken with her except what Haggai recommended. And that's how we should approach God. Only what the Holy Spirit gives us or recommends for us to have. Okay, so I think Haggai types the Holy Spirit. Mordecai, who's he? This one, it puzzles me a lot on this guy. Okay, some people say he's the Jesus type, the Messiah. Okay, but I don't think so. I think he might be the Jews who believe in Yeshua. Okay? He is the epitome, good, perfect Jew, which does type Jesus also, yes. Esther 2:22. Remember there was a plot to kill the king and Mordecai overheard it. But the plot became known to Mordecai and he informed Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. So Mordecai is doing the right thing. He's reporting whatever bad is happening to the king. I like that. That's what a Jewish person would do. That's what the law would say to do, right? If you know who committed the crime and you're put under oath, you are to tell, yes, they're the one who did it. They're the bad guy. Esther 3:5. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or pay him homage, he was filled with rage. Another good, positive Jewish trait. You are to make no other gods before him, and you're not to be bowing down to other gods. And Mordecai is following that rule. Yeah, I think Mordecai follows Judaism, but not Judaism, rabbinical Judaism of today. He's following the true, not Pharisee Judaism. There's lots of Judaisms over the last thousands of years, okay? I think he's following pure, good, Mosaic Judaism, as God intended it, and he gave it to Moses on the mountain. That's what Mordecai does. Oh, and look at this, Esther 2:9-11. The young lady pleased him and found favor with him, so he quickly provided her with cosmetics and food, gave her 7 choice female attendants from the king's palace, and transferred her and her attendants to the best place in the harem. Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred, because Mordecai had instructed her that she should not reveal them. Look at this one, 11. And every day Mordecai walked back and forth in front of the courtyard of the harem to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Okay, this is going to lead us into the next one. Who is Esther? And I'm going to tell you right now, Esther, I believe, is the church. Okay? She's let's just leave it at that. For a minute. Esther is the queen. Esther is the bride of the king. The church is the bride of the king, right? The believers, the Christians. And what does Mordecai do in that verse 11? It says, every day he walked back and forth in front of the courtyard to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Mordecai is taking a great interest in the bride of the king. He's watching, he's learning, he's seeing, he's interested. And how do Jews today, they are watching Christians. They're watching us. They want to see, because Christians are blessed. We are the new bride. We're not the new, we're the bride of God, right? Bride of the Messiah. And we have something that they don't have. And they're watching, they're curious. Remember, in the book of Romans, it says that the Christians, we are to provoke the Jews to jealousy. And that's what Mordecai is doing here. He's not jealous of this, but he is paying attention, and he's learning to see what's happening with this bride of the King, bride of Christ. The Jews today are watching Christians. And let me tell you, they watch. And I'm sure there's a lot of times that they see things that aren't the best, because Christians don't always behave the best. Okay, Esther. Esther is the church, we've said. She is the bride of the king. Look at Esther 2:17. The king loved Esther more than all of the women, and she found favor and kindness with him more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal turban on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. Okay, the Jews rejected their Messiah. The Jews are scattered around the world, and the Gentiles are now brought in. And that's how the God of Israel got known. The Jews are scattered all around the world. And they take with them their holy book, and they behave like Jews, and wherever they went, the people said, who are these people? And boy, they're acting. Give me their book. Let me have a look. And that's how the world got to know about the God of Israel, right? We don't know much about the God of Bolivia. We don't know much about the God of Tonga. You understand? But the Jews were scattered, and they took their God with them. And in 2 Corinthians 11:2, it says, for I am jealous for you with a godly jealousy, for I betrothed you to one husband, to present you as a pure virgin to Christ. See, the church becomes that pure virgin betrothed to Christ. Christ, anointed one, Messiah. Just whatever language you want to say, Mashiach, Messiah, Christ. It's all the same word. Okay, Haman, boo, boo. Who's Haman? Haman, I believe, is the Antichrist. Okay? Look at Esther 3:8-9. Then Haman informed King Xerxes, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples of every province of your kingdom. Their laws are different from everyone else's, and they do not obey the king's laws. So it is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will deposit 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury to pay those who carry it out. So Haman is, let's destroy the Jews. There's an anti-Christic concept. Esther 5:14. This is about Haman's wife. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows be made, 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, so he had a gallows made. And again, let's destroy the Jews. Let's destroy the good, believing Jews. That's godly Jews. Again, I'm not hanging my hat on any of these interpretations, but it could be. Okay, if you have a better one, don't send it to me because I don't have time to read it. Okay, Revelation 16, starting in verse 13. It said, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits that looked like frogs coming out of the mouths of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet." There is the unholy Trinity, right? In the Holy Trinity, we have God the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Satan does nothing original. He copies God, and he has his unholy Trinity of the dragon, Satan, the beast, which is Antichrist, and the false prophet, which is the unholy spirit. Verse 14. "These are demonic spirits that perform signs and go out to all the kings of the earth to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. And they assembled the kings in the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon." Well, that's what Haman wanted to do. Haman wanted to, let's go through the entire kingdom and destroy all the Jews. And that's what Antichrist / Satan is going to do in the end. He's going to gather everybody in the plains of Megiddo outside of Jerusalem to finally, let's go in and annihilate every Jew. Same concept here. And if you look at, here's the Persian Empire, okay? It goes 127 provinces from India to Kush. At the time, this was the world empire. In the end times, it'll be the entire world. But this is like a little microcosm of what's coming. Okay? And by the way, if you move this forward, that place called Kush down there below Egypt, Kush is Sudan, Ethiopia area. India is India. Persia changed its name to Iran in 1935. They became independent country and called themselves Iran. And today, Iran, which was Persia, Haman's stomping grounds, they're the same way as Haman. Let's kill and annihilate every Jew, right? Here's a headline from the Tehran Times, just one wrong move. This article from 2021 talks about if Israel does one bad thing to us or whatever, here are the prospective targets that we have. And they have a map on the front page of Israel with all these red dots. These are all the places we have our missiles aimed at. I don't believe they have the ability to send missiles and even hit Israel, let alone target these specific little dots. And nevertheless, God is not going to allow them, even if they had the ability, God's going to throw those missiles off course and not going to destroy Israel. God made a promise to Abraham, and that promise is good to go. But you can see that hate of Haman is still going on today in Iran. Here's an article from the Arab News, February of 2022. There's a factory that makes this is a factory in Iran that makes U.S. flags and Israeli flags. Why would they make flags of Israel and the United States? To burn! You ever see all those rioting people in Iran and they're always burning an Israeli flag, an American flag? I think, where do they get those? You know, I tried to buy an Israeli flag in America. It cost me, I don't know, $60 or something. It was expensive. Who's burning $60 flags? I'm sure they're making some cheap copy just for burning, and sure enough, they are. They got a factory that does it. So Iran, Persia, same, okay? And by the way, that word Iran comes from Aryan. And I know Aryan, where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, Aryan. You know, Aryan is actually an ancient word, and it represents a religious, cultural, linguistic group of people, Aryan, okay? And when Persia in 1935 chose to become a nation and became a nation, they picked this name, Iran. It comes from Aryan, okay? And Haman is the descendant or a priest descendant, whatever, of Iran. Okay? But you know where else we hear Aryan? You heard of the Aryan race. This is a rat bastard Adolf Hitler, right? He actually changed the meaning of the word and made it a racial thing, okay? Because the original was a linguistic, cultural group in that area of the world. And over the years, it got twisted and twisted and twisted, that Aryan then became like this master race or super race, okay? And that Germany was a descendant of the pure bloodline, perfect, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, perfect human, okay? So I want you to see that those two words, Aryan, they both lead to people who want to destroy the Jews. And the two meanings of those words are completely different to each group. The Iran, remember, is just a cultural thing. Hitler, it's a master race kind of thing. Okay? But both of them yielded a final solution. Let's eliminate every Jew. Okay, in Hitler's time, I told you, it was the perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed, which, by the way, Hitler wasn't blonde-haired, and a lot of his staff weren't either, you know, or his generals. But nevertheless, they had this preconceived concept in their brain. Okay, so Hitler made it racial. All right. Today we've got plain old orange juice. Okay, and with Hitler and those Aryans, it's kind of interesting. If you look in Revelation 2:13, it says, "I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, and you hold fast my name, and did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my witness, my faithful one, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells." So this is that letter that to Pergamum in Revelation 2. Remember, there's 7 churches God writes to. If you haven't seen my Revelation 1, 2, and 3 video, put that on your to-do list. It's very good. It's very long. I think like 3 hours and 45 minutes to watch the 2 videos, but eye-opening. But the second, was it the third one? Third one is Pergamum, Pergamos. And I went to Pergamos last year. It was very interesting. But it says, "I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is." Satan's throne is in Pergamum, Turkey. Well, it was apparently, according to Revelation 2. And some German archaeologists discovered it and moved it block by block to Berlin, and they built the Pergamum Museum to house this throne of Satan. Okay? And here's Satan's throne in Berlin. It's not surprising then that Hitler, he's got Satan's throne in his town, and he's wanting to kill all the Jews. That's a very satanic trait, okay? Here is the Pergamum Museum in Berlin that they built. It was built in 1930 to house this. And remember, we know that the Nazis tried to kill all the Jews, right? They killed 6 million plus Jews. And we saw in Esther 9, 7, 8, and 9, it was the 10 sons of Haman. Remember, the king said, "Hey, Esther, I killed Haman, and we killed 500 people in Susa, and that we hanged the 10 sons of Haman. And now, Esther, what do you want?" And she said, "I want you tomorrow to hang the 10 sons of Haman. After he just told her, he hanged the 10 sons of Haman. And in those list of 10 sons, there were some 3 minuscule letters and 1 majuscule letter, and those small and big letters added up gematria-wise to 5,707, which was 1946. If you want to know how I got all that, you can go back and watch part 2, Esther. And in 1946, they had the Nuremberg trials, and 11 Nazis were condemned to be hanged, Hermann Goering being the most famous one. But there was another one, Julius Streicher. He was the newspaper man who just spread lies and lies about the Jews and incited the Germans against Jews. Okay, and he was ended up being hanged with 9 others. Goering took a cyanide tablet prior, the morning before he was to be hanged, and he was already dead. So they ended up not hanging 11, they only hanged 10, which is a very prophetic kind of thing, since the Esther said, tomorrow may these 10 sons be hanged, when they had already been hanged. Okay, maybe she was speaking prophetically for the future, because in the future, 1946, 10 sons were hanged. Here was his sentence. I'm not going to read it again. You can pause it and read. This is for Julius Streicher, the newspaper man who incited everyone. And here are some headlines. There's the New York Times. Goering ends life by poison. 10 others hanged in Nuremberg prison for Nazi war crimes. Doomed men on gallows pray for Germany. Here's the Daily News. Goering ends life in cell. 10 Nazis hang. Hitler's #1 aide gulps poison. Okay. This Julius Streicher, his newspaper that he published for years was called Der Stürmer. And here you can see, here's an example of it, and there's some anti-Semitic stuff on the cover. And it was interesting, when Streicher, when it was time for him to be hanged, I mean, he was pro-Hitler up until the end. And he walked up the steps, and they put the noose around him, and he had his final words, and he says, "Now I go to God. Purim Fest 1946 goes now to God." How interesting that that would be his final words, Purim Fest, because Purim is the Esther story where 10 sons of Haman are hanged. And with those little letters in the 10 sons and that big Vav, it points to 1946 where 10 Nazis are hanged. There's a picture of Julius Streicher too, next to Hitler. Okay, but Hitler, of course, met his defeat because, as we know, Winston Churchill in England and the United States conquered them or defeated them, and we know that scissors beat paper. Okay, and by the way, God is not going to allow the Jews to be destroyed. You know, he made a promise to Abraham that your descendants will always be. And you even go back to the Garden of Eden and the seed of the woman from Genesis 3:15, that lineage of the Messiah was going to be carried on by the people of Israel. Okay, and it's a promise of God. It's going to continue. Okay, and if it wasn't Esther and Mordecai who saved the day, somebody else would have. I mean, God is not going to allow them to be destroyed. And you know what? Because God entrusted this line of the Messiah to the Jews and His Word, we should be on our knees thanking the Jews for bringing forth the Messiah. They were chosen for something. They were chosen to bring forth the Messiah and to keep his word. God bless the Jews. And those who are against him, this is that spirit of Amalek, right? It's a satanic spirit, and it is alive and well over the last, how many millennium, right? To kill the Jews. It's this battle of good and evil, God versus Satan. Satan is going to lose, but he's going to try his darndest to win. And he doesn't have many options left. His big option now is, if I can destroy every Jew, then he's made God out to be a liar, because God promised Abraham, your descendants will always be and multiplied, and like the stars in the sky, you won't be able to count them, or sand on the seashore. And over the millennia, there have been these Amalek types, or who wanted to destroy the Jews. It started with Jacob and Esau, right? Esau was a little upset, not a little upset, he was hugely upset because his birthright got stolen, and the blessing that Jacob tricked his father into giving him the blessing, okay? And we know that Esau's grandson is Amalek, and God said it. You should destroy Amalek, wipe his name off of the planet, okay, so we remembered no more. And we've talked about him, I think he was in the bonus of Esther part 1. Go watch that. And we've talked about Haman. Haman was a descendant of Agag. Agag was the king of the Amalekites. So Haman is in that lineage, right? Esau, by the way, is Edom. It was another name for him, red, Edom. Edom, Esau, Amalek, Haman. King Herod. King Herod was a descendant. It says King Herod was Idumean. Idumean is Edomaean. That's Edom. He was a descendant of Edom, a descendant of Esau. And what did King Herod do in the time of Jesus, right? He instructed that all male babies under 2 years old be slaughtered. It's called the Massacre of the Innocents. Peter Paul Rubens did a beautiful painting of that. Pause it and look. They're just butchering babies here. Okay? If you go further, you have the Roman Empire. The Romans were throwing Christians to the lions and the gladiators, and the Christians were hiding out in the catacombs. Here's a Nero's Torches painting by a Polish painter in 1876. And then you have Jews, Nero's torches. The Jews are the torches. So this let's destroy all the Jews concept that Haman did just continued on. You have the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, which was run by the Catholic Church. Here's the emblem of the Inquisition. Arise, O God, and judge your cause was their credo. It comes from Psalm 74 in our modern Bible. They have it as Psalm 73. But the Catholic Church the Catholic Church is very anti-Semitic. All right? Here's a painting from 1495. St. Dominic Guzman presiding over an auto de fe. Auto de fe was an act of faith, right? This is where the church would come in and say, you know, convert or die, confess or die. And they wanted the Jews to convert or confess or die. And they put them to death. And here you have one of these trials, okay, and you've got the victims naked, tied to a pole, being judged and probably killed. So that's the Inquisition, 1400s. Jump ahead a couple hundred years. Here's another group that you don't always suspect, but there's a a British poet, William Blake. Remember him? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in some fire of the night or something. I don't remember from high school. We had to read this. Okay, who's William Blake? Well, he wrote a poem called Jerusalem. Oh, well, that seems positive and nice. Let's see what that is all about. You know, I spent a lot of time visiting friends in England, and I would actually live with them for a week, 2 weeks at a time. And there's a big thing once a year in England called the proms. I think it's in September, and they all meet at the Royal Albert Hall, and they have giant screens out in Hyde Park and throughout England. In parks, they have giant screens, and everybody comes. It's kind of like a 4th of July thing, and everybody's wearing the Union Jack flag and the red, white, and blue, and they have entertainment, and the main one is in the Royal Albert Hall, right? And at the end of the night, they sing this song called Jerusalem. Wow, isn't that nice that the British people would sing a song about Jerusalem? Well, let's look at the lyrics of Jerusalem. And by the way, the word British, ish means man, and Brit is covenant. Brit-ish is covenant man. The British believe, this is replacement theology, that the Jews were the chosen people, but they killed their Messiah, and now God has chosen us as the new chosen people. So the British sing this song. Look at verse 1. And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green, and was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? So it's asking, was Jesus in England walking around in England? Did the Messiah, did the Holy One of Israel come to England? And look at the last verse. I will not cease from mental flight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. It's pure replacement theology. Anti-Jew, pro-England. We are the new chosen people, the Church of England. Sorry. Who else has this Amalek spirit? Well, in Russians you have what's called a pogrom. There were pogroms where you would go, the Russian people went out and killed Jews. Here was a Kishinev pogrom in 1903. Here's a picture of 5 of the 49 victims of that. Okay, and the word pogrom is a Russian word which means like to wreak havoc or to demolish violently and just completely, utterly destroy. And they killed thousands and thousands of Jews during this. If you want to see a good movie about that, it's not all about that, but the movie Fiddler on the Roof does touch on the pogroms, and it's a very entertaining movie, and you can learn a lot about the Jews and their customs and traditions. Tradition. But by watching Fiddler on the Roof, but you also see examples of the Russian pogroms against the Jews in that movie. And I've watched the movie many times, and I was blessed enough to see it on Broadway with Topol, the original. Here's my playbill. It was very nice. Besides the Russian pogroms, we've talked about Hitler. Okay, here, look, here's a picture of Hitler greeting representatives from the Vatican. I mean, talk about a den of thieves or strange bedfellows. It turns out that not so strange, is it? You know, the Catholic Church, anti-Semitic, Hitler, anti-Semitic, birds of a feather. So, this spirit of Amalek has been going on and on and on. You know, I've been to Auschwitz a couple times, and just, it's in near Poland, or not, it's in Poland, Auschwitz. But this was the entrance to the gas chamber. Very eerie place to be, because you think you're walking into a shower, and the Jews thought they were walking into a shower. And you get inside, and this was the room. And those walls, I'm telling you, they must have been 6 feet thick. I don't know. They were concrete. You are not getting out of there alive. So there's the inside of the gas chamber. And then their bodies were taken to the crematorium, which was at the end of the gas chamber, and they were put on these things, and this metal thing pushed the bodies into the furnaces. Just absolutely horrible. But this is that spirit of Haman, spirit of Amalek, that continues on. And it's around today. You know, we had a president, Obama. He was very anti-Semitic. And let me tell you, I'm not comparing, I mean, there are degrees that they're anti-Semite. You know, he's not shoving people into ovens, no. But he's doing things to stab the Jews in the back. Before he left office, the UN had a resolution to condemn Israel for building settlements, and the United States should have vetoed that resolution. And if we would have vetoed the resolution, it would not have gone through. Obama didn't veto it. Obama abstained. And the other four, there's 5 permanent members of the UN, 4 of them voted for the resolution, and the United States abstained. What a piece of crap decision is that? Here the headline, Israel says Obama was behind the UN gang-up. Choosing not to veto, Obama lets anti-settlement resolution pass at UN Security Council. Obama gives $100 billion to Iran, to Persia, the enemy of the Jews, in cash. Here's a headline from Haaretz, Israeli newspaper. Here's another one. Israeli officials remain defiant as Obama garners Senate support for Iran deal. There was no love lost between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Obama. And you know, coming in the future, if you read Ezekiel 38, 1 through 6, there's a big battle coming that the Bible prophesies called the Battle of Gog and Magog. Perhaps you've heard of it. Verse 1, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and lead you out with all your army, horses and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company of bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya are with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all its troops, the house of Togarmah from the far north and all its troops. Many people are with you. This big battle, God is actually going to put hooks in their mouth and pull them into Israel to attack. And then God is going to wipe them out. 5/6 of the this entire attacking army will be destroyed. So this spirit of Amalek is continuing in the future. And the reason I even brought this one up, well, one, it's about to happen, so you have that spirit of Amalek, spirit of Haman continuing. But look at some of the players in here. Rosh. A lot of people say Rosh is Russia. It's coming from the far north, right? It mentions Persia. It says Ethiopia. In the Hebrew it's Cush. Cush is at Sudan area below Egypt. And Libya. Libya is Put. Put is North Africa, like Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, not friends of Israel. But they're all going to come in to attack. Togarmah. Togarmah is Turkey. I mean, it mentions the players here. And they're coming with Persia. Here, look at this picture this is the Iranian leader and Putin. And Putin, of course, Russia, and Erdogan, the president of Turkey. These three no-goodniks have recently joined together into a nice little cabal that they're going to attack Israel. I mean, the Bible says it's going to happen. And we had mentioned Obama being so anti-Israel. Look at Ezekiel 38, 2 and 3. You know, it says, Son of man, set your face toward Gog, the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. That word is not prince. The word for prince in Hebrew is sar. And here it doesn't use that. It's using the word, the translation is the president of Rosh, Meshech, Tubal. Okay, so we have the word president in here. And if you notice, in this 2 and 3, if you count every 7 letters, starting with the first green letter, the green aleph at the end of that word for president, and then count 7 letters, you get a vav, and 7 letters you get a bet, and 7 letters an aleph, 7 letters a mem, and 7 letters a hey. That spells Obama, every 7 letters apart. Okay, I don't know what to do with that, but it's there. President Obama. Wonder who Gog might be. I don't think it could be. You know, it's not our job to figure out who it's going to be. Gog, by the way, is a leader. Magog is the land. So I don't think Obama is Gog. But it is interesting that in this verse full of enemies of Israel, Obama's name is woven in there. Some other modern examples of anti-Israel. Here's a picture of a Bangladeshi passport. And on the first page, notice way at the bottom in English it says, this passport is valid for all countries of the world except Israel. This anti-Semite, anti-Semitic spirit of Amalek continues to this day. You've heard of the BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction, where you want to boycott Israel, divest from Israel, and sanction Israel. And so many groups join up with this. Here's Amnesty International. They are big in the BDS movement, right? Amnesty International condemns Israeli apartheid as a cruel system of domination. And there's a lot of United States Christian churches that tie in with this BDS. The United Church of Christ joins the BDS campaign in protest at the treatment of Palestinians. The Presbyterian USA, very anti-Israel, BDS movement. You know, here's one that was surprising, and I want to be careful with this, but years ago, maybe 3 years ago or so, I was invited by an employee of a church in Eden, North Carolina, to come and speak for a 2-day conference. And when I get invited to speak, I don't charge anybody anything. I mean, well, I don't care if it's Fiji, India, Panama. I charge nobody. I go on my own dime and spread this word. And you'll notice in my videos, I don't ask for money. Someday we might throw in a, hey, if you want to send some money, God bless you. But we haven't yet. And but we are going to soon. Anyway, but they're not going to be in the video. It'll be its own little video asking if you want to send money, because people ask all the time, how can we donate to this ministry? So I told him, clear it with the pastor, and there was an assistant pastor. He's the #1 assistant pastor at this church, a Baptist church in Eden, North Carolina, and he cleared it, and so I bought a ticket. It's not cheap to fly there, because you have to go to a small regional airport, and it was about $400, plus your other expenses of eating and stuff. And we get there, and the pastor of the church, he had some grudge or something against the person who invited me, or I don't know what the politics were going on behind the scene, but the night before I was to speak, I was told that the pastor canceled the event. And now I'm stuck in this town for 3 days twiddling my thumbs. And I tried to talk to the pastor. He wouldn't see me. And his reason is that he said, what I teach is heresy. Well, you guys have watched my videos. Do you see anything heretical in anything that I teach? I mean, I go through these videos with a fine-tooth comb, and I check every jot and tittle and make sure that what I'm saying is true. And he would not allow this thing to go on. I had a pastor. I speak at a church in Tennessee every year for Sukkot, and I had him try to call and explain to the pastor, listen, John's message is not heresy. It's Hebrew. It's beautiful. He would not budge. You know, that's just wrong. And is that anti-Israel? Is it anti-Jew? Is it anti-Hebrew? I don't know what spur was in his butt that wouldn't allow me to come, or not allow me to come. I already came there. Not allow me to speak. But it was a big church, and there's thousands of people who were not allowed to hear God's beautiful Hebrew message because of this pastor who is supposed to be shepherding his people. So, you know, we need to pray for our churches and pray for this pastor that God will open his eyes, and pray for the people of his church that their eyes will be open, if his are not. Because that's just not right. And you know what? I went to the church's website, and they have all these, of course, ads, not ads, but promotions for things coming, Christmas at this church. And they had pictures of the stage covered with Christmas trees. And, Jeremiah 10 says, do not be like the pagans who go out in the forest and cut down a tree and bring it in the house and nail it to the floor and decorate it with silver and gold. Don't do that, Yet his stage was covered with Christmas trees. And they have their promotion for Easter. Easter, there's no Easter in the Bible. It's Passover. Easter is named for the Babylonian fertility goddess Ishtar, who Semiramis went up into heaven. She came down in a giant egg and popped out as the fertility goddess Ishtar, and she turned a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. And there are some New Testament translations which put in the word Easter, but that is not what it says. The holiday is Passover, Pesach. So who's the one teaching heresy? We need to pray for our Christian churches that they will support Israel and love Israel, right? Israel, the Jews are Jesus's brothers and sisters. We're supposed to be setting an example to the Jews. Romans 11:11, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall, the Jews? Certainly not. But through their fall, to provoke them to jealousy, salvation has come to the Gentiles. We Gentiles are supposed to have the true life of Jesus in us. And we're supposed to set an example and cause the Jews to become jealous. And our Christian churches, many of them, are not doing that. Jews watch. Remember, Mordecai walked back and forth in front of the courtyard of the harem to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Esther is the church. Mordecai is watching to learn and see. And that's how the Jews are going to learn about Yeshua, is by watching the Gentiles and how they behave. The church is the bride of Christ. And remember, the Jews are the olive tree. We Christians, the Gentiles, are the wild olive tree. And our branches get grafted in to the natural olive tree. The church, the believers, we should treat and love the Jews as in-laws, not hate and treat them as outlaws, which a lot of churches are doing. All right, but I digress. Okay, let's wrap this up with one last cool thing. Look at Esther 1:1. And it happened in the days of Ahasuerus. That's how Esther begins. And in Hebrew, that first word, notice, begins with a vav. And Esther 10:3, this is the last verse of Esther. For Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and in favor with his many kinsmen, one who sought the good of his people, and one who spoke for the welfare of his entire nation. The last letter of Esther is also a vav. So that's interesting. The first letter of Esther, vav. The last letter of Esther, vav. Remember, vav, the gematria is 6. So 6 and 6 is 12. So why am I even bringing that up? 12, if you'll remember, and if you've been paying attention, 12 weaves itself through the whole book of Esther. In Esther 2:12, when the turn came for each woman to go into King Ahasuerus after the end of her 12 months under the regulation for the women. Esther 3:7, in the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, the pur, that is, the lot, was cast before Haman to determine a day and month. And the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. Esther 9:1, on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the king's command and edict were to be executed. On this day, the enemies of the Jew had hoped to overpower them, but their plan was overturned, and the Jews overpowered those who hated them. Esther 2:5, there was a Jew at the citadel in Susa whose name was Mordecai, the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. He was a Jew. He was one of Jacob's 12 sons. And he was a Benjamite, which was Jacob's 12th son. You'll see that 12 just weaves its way all through. Why? I don't know. But it's there. Okay. All right. Thanks for watching. God bless. To God be the glory. To God be the honor. To God be the praise. We will see you soon. Bye-bye. Wait! We have a bonus. Okay, I was showing you earlier how God wove his name, Yud-He-Vav-He, through forwards and backwards using first letters and last letters of 4 consecutive words. And that word, that name, Yud-He-Vav-He, which some pronounce Yehovah, some pronounced Yahweh, not sure how it's pronounced, and that's not the point here, but I know that in the English translations, they always translate his name as Lord. Capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, right? Okay, so here are those 4 verses in the English, and let's look at each one. Here it is, Esther 1:20. When the king's edict which he will make is heard throughout his kingdom, great as it is, then due respect our ladies shall give to their husbands, great and small. Here's that phrase, due respect our ladies shall give to their husbands. Notice, there's a do is D, respect R, our O, ladies L. There's the name Lord written backwards. Granted, this is not the Hebrew, this is the English, and with English, you can translate it, and there's how many different English translations of the Bible? King James, New King James, NAS, NIV, Berean Study Bible, Dewey-Reams. Everybody's translated it, and as long as the meaning is there, I don't care which translation you're using, right? The Hebrew, I don't change anything. The Jews have passed that book on to us, and it is perfect. But in English, you can make little changes and translate it any way you want. And here this fella, I think his name is Bollinger. I don't think so. His name is Bollinger. He translated it so that not only does it spell Lord, Yud-He Vav-He in the Hebrew, which is what God planted, but he translated it so it had Lord in there also. Very nice in the English. Okay, Esther 5:4, Esther said, if it pleases the king, let our royal dinner this day be graced by the king and Haman. Remember, Esther invited them to a banquet. And here's the phrase, let our royal dinner, that's L-O-R-D, forward on 4 consecutive letters in English. Esther 5:13. Yet, this is Haman, yet I am not satisfied. This is after the king invited him to a dinner and made him number 2 and gave him his signet ring. And he said, yet I am not satisfied, for no avail is this to me every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. And there's the word satisfied, for no avail. Notice the last letters of those 4 words, D, R, O, and L. So you have the Lord written backwards using first letters of, or the last letters of 4 consecutive words. Esther 7:7. The king then got up in his anger from drinking wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that he had evil to fear determined against him by the king. Here's that phrase, evil to fear determined. And if you take the last letters of 4 consecutive words, you have L-O-R-D. It's woven in there in the English also. How clever is that? It does it in Hebrew and it can do it in English also. Beautiful. And one last one, Esther 7:5. Remember, he wove the name, his name, Ehyah, I am. It was in the Hebrew. It's the 4 consecutive words. It's the last letter of each word spells I am, Ehyah. And if we change it to English, then King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, who and where dwelleth the enemy that dareth presume to do this thing? If I take that phrase, where dwelleth the enemy that dareth, and we look at the last letter of 4 consecutive words, we get E-H-Y-H, Ehyah. All right, there's your fun bonus. God bless. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye. Bye.